Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our studies of Second Kings. Today we're in Second Kings chapter 12. And here in this chapter we see King Joash as he is trying to get the temple repaired. And it's going to be a lifelong work of the king in this particular aspect. I want us to look at a few things that transpire because some of the things that we see happening in Second Kings chapter 12 help to remind us that people have always been the same, and just because you live in a different time doesn't mean things work any differently than even they do today. There's still bureaucracy and there's still resistance to things that should be done and that can be done, uh, but at the same time, things can still be accomplished. So let's look at a couple of things here in Second Kings chapter 12. As you begin the chapter, you have Joash who is trying to repair the temple. He is trying to take care of things that have been dilapidated, they have gone without work being done to them in the days of Athaliah and some of the previous kings. And so now Joash wants to repair the temple. He wants to get it back to being a place where they can fully go through the worship of the Lord, but also a place where the beauty of the temple has been restored. And while he is trying to do that, he makes a statement to the priests early on in the chapter where he talks about the money of the dedicated gifts that are brought into the house of the Lord are to be used in order to repair the temple. It's not an extraordinary request, nor is it one that would be overly burdensome to be able to accomplish for the priests, and yet the priests refuse to do it. It's going to be stated in the chapter that in verse number 5 that by the 23rd year of Joash, the temple still hasn't been repaired. Now remember, Joash is going to become king at the age of 7. And so by the time we reach his 23rd year, he's now 30 years old, and the temple still has not been repaired. And so then it's going to be the case that Joash is going to call Jehoiada and the other priests, and he's going to ask for answers. Because he had given a decree, he had asked them to do something, and they have refused to do it. Now, the priests then agree. They come back and they say, okay, we'll make sure that it gets done. And Jehoiada is going to put together this means by which it can be done. He's going to build a giving chest, basically, is what it boils down to. He's going to take a chest, bore a hole in the lid, and he's going to place it beside the altar. And then that's going to be a situation where the monies that are brought in can be placed in there and then they can be utilized for that. But the fact of the matter is, it should have never gotten to that point. It shouldn't have even been necessary for that to be the case. But once again, you're dealing with areas of bureaucracy where the priests don't want to use the money that Joash told them to use, and so they decide they're just going to do their own thing with it. Sound like anything else that we ever have to deal with in our world? Of course it does. Because these kinds of things have always happened. And these kinds of things have always been taking place. But I want you to notice something else here. When you drop down to verse number 14, and you begin looking at the workmen that they finally do hire in order to take care of these things, you find out that these workmen are honest in all of their dealings. As a matter of fact, it is stated that they gave the money that they gather in to the workmen to repair the house. It says, moreover, they did not require an account from the men into whose hand they delivered the money to be paid to workmen, for they dealt faithfully. The priests and the workmen who take care of the money in this particular situation, both the priests who hand it over and the workmen who are supposed to be using it to repair the temple, both deal honestly. You know, honesty and integrity is a very important commodity in our world. And yet it's one that's often underutilized and underappreciated. We are to be those who work honestly. We are to be those that when something is entrusted to us, we show integrity in the way that we use it. And that when we are given a task, we do it in such a way that there's not any question as to whether or not we have handled things correctly, whether we've handled the funds for it correctly, and so on and so forth. Here you have a situation where there are honest workmen, and they realize, based upon the things that are being done, the way they're being done, there never has to be an account that is given, but if there were, it obviously could be. We are to be ones who follow that example in the way that we do business and in the way that we deal with others. But then I want to notice one final area, and that is when it comes to Hazael, the king of Syria. You know, Hazael's going to be a thorn in the side of the people of Israel for quite some time. Hazael is once again going to go on a rampage. This time he's going to go down to the Philistines and he's going to take the city of Gath, but then he's going to set his sights on Jerusalem. And when he does, Joash is going to pay a ransom to Hazael for him to leave them alone. That ransom is going to include all of the sacred things that his fathers, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, had dedicated, and his own sacred things. Now, when we talk about sacred things, these are not necessarily things dedicated to God in this particular instance, though he is going to give all the gold found in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. But rather, the word sacred simply means set apart. So these were the things that were set apart. These were the family jewels, if you want to call them that. These were the things that were set apart for the royal family in Judah. So he is going to give out of his own things that were set apart for his family and for his usage, and things that he found valuable. This goes back to one of the principles that riches and money and wealth and physical things are just that. And they are replaceable. They are not the most important commodities in an individual's life. Joash was willing to let go of the physical things for other purposes, because those things were not the most important to him. Those treasures and those treasuries could be replaced, but the lives of his people could not. And so we see here an individual who is not so tied to physical things and not so proud of the wealth that he has, that he is not willing to part with it, and he is willing to lose people's lives in order to keep it. These are some of the things that I see in 2 Kings chapter 12. I hope that they're beneficial to you. Next time we'll come back and we'll begin looking at chapter 13. I hope you'll join us then. But until then, have a great day.